So I came across this from Grit Media yesterday with the title Minister Questioned on Ireland's International Obligations, and I thought, isn't that interesting? In fact, wasn't I talking about that in the last few days? I'm not saying it's related, but I'm sure other people are thinking the same things, which is nice. But I have no idea who the individual is. The details here, Fine Gael Minister Heather Humphreys said Ireland is a very proud and active member of the EU. We make decisions collectively. And I'm thinking, as I have for a very long time, a great educator would be Norman Dodd on tax-exempt foundations. Now, from memory, it has been a few years, but he was the head researcher for a thing called the Rees Committee, roughly about 1953, which was set up to question the tax-exempt status of many foundations in America. What they went and found was astounding. And it was eventually, hushed up, the whole investigation. But, and for some who were involved in the research, it completely changed their lives, and not for the better, because just everything they had faith in was suddenly not the case. I'll get back to this. I may play a wee clip from this, but I'll certainly leave you a link to it, as I usually do, in the pinned comment. So, getting back to this. Under fair use,
Minister this week, Senator Michael McDowell asked whether the 1951 UN asylum rules are actually equipped to deal with mass numbers of economic migrants, the way we've been seeing across Europe, as you say. And he described the Geneva Convention's refugee policy as, quote, outdated and unsustainable. So I'm just wondering, since the government often refers to Ireland having its hands tied by so-called international obligations, would you agree with McDowell that it might be worth considering whether some of those obligations, like the 1951 rules, might not be fit for purpose anymore in a modern context when geopolitics is so different to when it was first drafted?
Now, you'll notice with a lot of underlying occultists, especially in politics, is they'll have something, with a bit of Masonic flair, the checkerboard, the black and the white, blah, blah, blah. And of course, the ring on many women's right hand there is not exclusively, but in many respects, symbolizing their fraternal aspects with, for example, Eastern Star, etc. I'm not saying that's everybody, but it's a thing. Anyway, let's carry on.
Yeah, well, look, I didn't actually hear or
see what I heard there? I'm thinking this. But I think she was a bit stunned at what she was asked there, and I'm sure she'd have preferred he asked somebody else.
McDowell, and I know that Minister McEntee obviously keeps these things under review, and that's everything is kept under review, and we deal with it on an EU basis. And I know that the minister is in constant contact with our right across Europe,
which basically says you don't have a democracy. People don't realise this. If the puppets you think you're voting in are representing the interests of a collective other than yours, then you are in a collectivistic estate. Part of. That's basically it. Because collectivism was one of the plans, absolutely, that you stifle and destroy any real aspects of democracy and replace it on this global village basis. Yeah. I mean, even the witchcraft of that global village, yeah, it plays with the mind. But basically, you're paying to be enslaved, and your opinions count for nothing. Absolutely nothing. And you're being ruled, quite literally, by people who purport to represent your interests, but they're actually puppets themselves, and basically just actors and actresses there to give you the illusion that you have a say in this. But no, it's collectivism. It's collectivism on steroids. I said Ireland needs out of the EU and the UN, which I surprised. Well, I mean, let's face it, I can't make any comments now in the Daily Mail. But I got about 336 thumbs up. Yeah. Think about what she's saying here.
I mean, but personally, for your part, I'm wondering.
I mean, he's stuttering himself, because he's probably like, she didn't even hide it. It's just like, nah, it's to do with Europe, you know.
When the government is constantly running into roadblocks where they say we have to do this because of our international obligations, or we have to do that because of our international obligations, is that a source of frustration to you, that you feel like we should be looking at?
See, basically, they're all in jobs, and one of the reasons they're in their jobs is because they're part of fraternities who know that while they're in their jobs and out of their jobs, that they keep their gob shut, that it's about the long-term goals of the Masonic G, etc. Yeah, they're hidden masters.
Many of these obligations are actually useful to the country, and how many of them might be impeding important policy decisions in areas like immigration, for example. Would you have a personal view on that?
I tell you what we are. Ireland is a very proud and active member of the EU. We make decisions collectively, and as I said, we
think about what she's saying.
Engage with our counterparts right across the European.
Our other Masonic buddies, male and female, who also know to keep their gob shut, go with the flow, with the programme, do the theatre. They are but fine and well-paid actors and actresses.
Union in terms of looking at the rules-based system that we
rules-based system. Look at what's happening around you. They're not acting. I mean, even the wording, because that's what they're doing. They're acting. They're not doing. They're not working on your behalf. They're there to give you the illusion that you voted them in, that they're working for you and your interests. But they keep saying it's collective. You look at the SNP. You look at Labour. You look at the Conservatives. They're not Conservatives. You know, it really doesn't matter what costumes they wear. The agendas carry on. Let's face it. We were supposed to be out in Europe, what was it, 2016? Here we are. How many years later? Yeah? 8 years? Yeah. And we're still taking in X, Y, and Z and all the rest of it. No, you keep hearing, and the bleat is, we have international obligations. We all have to play our part in international obligations. What international obligations? Who did we sign up for these things? No, we didn't. Yeah? And in a true democracy, we should be able to right, we voted X, Y, and Z in, and we're telling you, we're no longer involved in these obligations. We're looking after our host nation, the land that we care about. Blah blah blah. We're going to work for the people. You're never going to hear that. Never going to hear that, because they just keep saying international obligations, and you think of Norman Dodd.
How do you see that the purpose and direction of the major foundations has changed over the years to the present? What is it today?
100% behind meeting the cost of education, such as it is presented through the schools and colleges of the United States, on the subject of our history has proven our original ideas to be no longer practical. The future belongs to a collectivistic concept.
Think about it. They've been destroying our history, rebranding it, putting people and characters and stories that would never have been historically there at the time, whatever else, and they just don't care. And rinse and repeat. Then you dumb down people through the education system, especially over the last few decades.
And there's just no disagreement on that.
Why do the foundations generously support communist causes? in the United States.
Think about just now what you're seeing in all these college campuses. I mean, it's history repeating itself. They were doing it in the 60s, the 70s, the blah, blah, blah. And here we are in the 2020s. And we're doing it. We're seeing it in the colleges and all the rest of it again. And as usual, it's never about their own nation, blah, blah, blah. And they demonize the host nation. None of this is new. The point is, most people's attention spans are not what they were.
Well, because to them, what communism represents a means of developing what we call a monopoly.
You see, that's another thing people don't realize. Communist nations like China and in Russia, who owns these communist plants, these supposedly communist plants and businesses? Believe it or not, behind the scenes, it's the international backers and various families and all the rest of it. It doesn't matter if it's the illusion of democracy or what you see as communism, wherever it is, blah, blah, blah. It's the same people behind the scenes that own it all, and what they're looking for is the fine-tuning of this business in a sort of global collective. Thereby, it brings down administration costs. Because if you think, honestly, they're humouring is so many of these underlying muppets as regards these occult elites. I mean, we are dealing, honestly, the network's about 10% of society. But even although people go, wow, come on, Scott. It's at least that. Because if you looked at it as a business, you've got various aspects of many businesses, hierarchical structures, and what they facilitate and do within various networks. It covers all creeds, colours, classes, and they're almost invisible to most people, simply because most people aren't aware of the system. And they cover themselves by supposedly doing great deeds and acts and whatever else and blah, blah, blah. But it's a system we live in. And by the day, they're losing patience in humouring people. Hence the reason why none of them blink about the hardship of many. Because as I've tried to say for years, the idea of things like karma is that if you're having a shite time, you're paying for it from a past life. So it leaves them without any feeling of guilt, no matter how evil their deeds are. You know, because remember, most of them are networked and their social lives are intertwined. Because their very lives are their work and their occult networks and the benefits of being in them. So they don't really genuinely care, by and large, what you think individually of them, or even collectively of them, as long as you don't see them for what they are, occultists. And I'm not particularly picking on this individual, but I'd be fairly confident she's somewhere in the occult network. They have to be, otherwise they don't get their jobs. Seriously. And many of them you find are specific personalities, and even from their school age and before in some cases, you know, they're groomed into these networks. And say, for example, you'll find many politicians or have a legal background, but for example, many who got on in the legal profession had some experience in things like debating societies, amateur dramatics, you know, as teenagers. You know, they showed some spark about them that, for example, others within the education system in the form of teachers, long-standing, look for specific character traits. This is fed through the network. I mean, even you as an individual will be known by other people occult-wise, network-wise, even on the fact of just knowing who's living where. Seriously. It's an extremely, extremely complex subject. But you'll notice she's not blinking very much when she says, yeah, collectively.
We have, and I think it's important that we do that as a collective.
That's why I drop the hint every now and again about Star Trek, because everything about Star Trek is collectivism. Yeah, and you're groomed into, oh, look at all these things. Oh, look at the foresight. They saw all these things coming. Well, how about the military-industrial complex had been planning on all those things coming to lead to agendas, to goals, the achieving of goals, getting people to have quite literally monitoring devices about their person. Yeah, where's Kirk? Oh, he's in deck 5, such and such. Why is that? Because he's badge. Yeah, and then of course, remember this was from the 60s onwards. Piece of plastic in their hand. What are you doing? Oh, I'm scanning for such and such. Oh, great. Well, you've got this thing in your hand now called a mobile phone that does so many things, including scan, whatever this, that, whatever. Yeah, it can tell you where you are GPS-wise. You could apparently, with the right app, just sit it in the car and you're checking your car's 0 to 60 and so much more. Oh, you want to check your pulse, blah, blah, blah. And everybody involved in it, by and large, who goes along with this, thinks of it, whether they admit it or not, as their best friend. It's just, honestly, the complexities of this and so much more. And I remember, honestly, let's go to, God Almighty, God bless you, dog, you can snore. This one. Man who agrees with the media, universities, corporations, and Hollywood thinks he's part of the resistance. And that is it. That's just the fucking... that's basically all the colleges and universities now. They're literally quite like, right, Cuba. Che Guevara. If you're looking at the history of that guy, seriously, another Masonic puppet, but like so many of them, change agents. But yeah, man who agrees with the media, universities, corporations, and Hollywood thinks he's part of the resistance. And it's so true. It's so true. And what did he think they're part of? Seriously. That's why the education system is so important to get the collectivistic aspects that, the subliminalist humanity scum, really. And if you want to stand out, get your hair coloured, do X, Y, and Z, obviously you've not got much of a personality and you can't really actually be much of an individual. So you might as well go with the collective in so many ways, and we'll tell you, because we'll have handlers who have monitored you and so many other people under their care, to make sure that, you're the right type of muppet that will just go out there and, honestly, the complexity of this and so much more. And here we are, nearly 18 minutes. I apologise. But anyway, your thoughts, your views, your thumbs up, shares, and if you like what I do, support the channel, and I'll speak to you soon.